Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is our final presentation for EDSE 124. This is our Social Justice for Mathematics lesson plan. To the right, we have our QR code, which you may scan so you may follow along with our lesson plan during this presentation. My name is Lizette Castillo. We will also have Laura Diaz-Gonzalez, Samantha Fan, and Moi Tong Wu presenting today. So a little bit of background. The age range that we will be teaching our lesson plan to is 14 to 15-year-olds in the 9th grade. The school they attend is San Jose High School. Our objectives are, by using systems of linear equations, we can model the relationship between low-income families and the growth of the rent rates in housing. Systems of linear equations consist of finding equivalent values in functions using the elimination, substitution, and graphing methods in solving for linear inequalities. For example, students would use what they have learned to predict how high family salaries would have to be in order for them to be able to pay rent in a specific neighborhood for a certain amount of years. They can also use this lesson to calculate how long it would take to pay off certain amounts and how decreases or increases in salary or rate changes the outcome. Graphically, students would also review intervals and how to increment to axis based on the scenario. So here are some of the Common Core and ELD standards. So first, we have exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussions on a range of social and academic topics. We also have offering and justifying opinions, negotiating with and persuading others in communicative exchanges. And then we have create equations and inequalities in one variable and use them to solve problems, include equations arising from linear and quadratic functions, and simple rational and exponential functions. Solve a simple system consisting of a linear equation and a quadratic equation in two variables algebraically and graphically. For example, find the points of intersection between the line y equals negative 3x and the circle x2 plus y2 equals 3. Understand that the graph of an equation in two variables is the set of all its solutions plotted in the coordinate plane, often forming a curve, which could be a line. Next, we will have Moi, and she will go into the lesson overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizette. So this lesson would be a multi-day lesson. We are thinking that 3 days would be appropriate for a lesson of this amount of detail. Since we'll be focusing on math and the students' experiences with rent and personal wages, day 1 would focus mostly on rules and regulations because our students should be able to treat each other with respect throughout the entirety of the 3 days. While going over the math lesson of systems of linear equations, we'll be discussing important vocabulary needed in the math lesson, like absolute value, inverse, asymptote, and axis of symmetry, along with vocabulary needed for the social justice aspect of the lesson, like rent, gentrification, and community. After going through the lesson, which will take up the majority of the day, the students will be provided with computer time at the end of class, as well as on the other 2 days. And this will allow them to use different ways of completing assignments as needed, especially if they do not have these resources at home. The assignment on the first day is to explain what they already know about gentrification and research more about how families are affected by this phenomenon. When they go home that day, they will be expected to discuss with their parents or guardians about how their family may be affected by minimum wage and gentrification. Day 2 will focus mainly on the social justice aspect of this lesson. The students will warm up with some systems of equations and questions and engage in discussions with their classmates in small groups about the assignment from the day before. These discussions may be shared with the class if they feel comfortable enough. After these discussions, the students will have time on their computers to write a blog post about what they discussed with their parents, which will be shared on a class-exclusive website. The students will be provided with opportunities to come up with their own examples of equations based on how much income they earn at home and how much their rent is. And finally, day 3 will be dedicated to the final project where students have an opportunity to show their creative side. It will be a Sims project where students will be able to create the perfect world where the income is a livable wage for the citizens. And now we will hear from Samantha with how this math lesson completely connects to gentrification. Samantha?
Thank you, Moi. I will be discussing the connection to gentrification. Firstly, students will be informed about rent control and gentrification in low-income communities. Whether or not these students can relate, we want them to realize that this reality is relevant, which is why we would ask each student about their backgrounds so other students who aren't experiencing this can get a perspective. Then in groups, students will share their stories. To apply the math lesson, we will be referring to Big Ideas Math Algebra 1, where we will connect the ideas of gentrification with system of linear equations and inequalities with one, many, or no solutions, method of solving, and graphing their models. For example, students will be able to model their income or salary and determine if their rent is too high or just enough for a certain amount of time. They can also calculate how much they will have left over or how another job can help with paying the rent. Now Laura will wrap it up with the reflection.
Thank you, Samantha. And hello, my name is Laura Diaz, and I'll be talking about the reflection part of our lesson plan. We thought about what could have gone wrong in the lesson and concluded that this lesson could bring heated discussions between the students. So to prevent discussions, we decided to introduce the new vocabulary and tell the students that this was a lesson in which they will learn so much about. Another thing that could have gone wrong was that we were not sure of the lack of technological knowledge or access to technology. So we decided to provide laptops and computers at schools for Block Post. We provided computer lab time for the students to work during school time. Another thing that we thought about was extension opportunities. So if the student didn't finish their blogs during the class time, we would have them turn in their blog at the end of the day, which was at 11:15 p.m. so they have more time to work on it. Finally, we decided that students will be making their own scenarios. They will be plugging in numbers to equations. And with this lesson plan, the students will understand their community and future. They will have better awareness of the importance of money and education. And this was our lesson plan. Thank you so much.